What if Iron Man's armor wasn't gold titanium, but forged entirely out of vibranium? On the surface, it sounds like the ultimate upgrade, right? But here's the kicker. Vibranium wouldn't just make him stronger, it would rewrite how his entire suit works. From absorbing hits like nothing ever could, to messing with his own flight systems and weapons, this isn't the simple power boost everyone thinks, because once you understand what vibranium really does, you'll realize a full Iron Man suit made of it might be both his greatest strength and his biggest weakness. So let's walk through what would happen if Tony swapped his gold titanium nanoparticles for pure vibranium. First, durability. A full vibranium shell would be insanely tough. Bullets, explosions, even the force of a punch vibranium absorbs that kinetic energy on a molecular level instead of transferring it through the metal. In simple terms, instead of the suit bending, the energy gets tucked away inside the metal's bonds. That sounds perfect for armor, almost unbreakable. But durability isn't the whole story. Vibranium's ability to store energy is a double-edged sword. In some portrayals, vibranium can hold kinetic energy and release it later like a compressed spring. That gives the wearer interesting defensive options. A hit could be absorbed and then discharged as a shockwave, or routed to power systems. But it also creates engineering headaches. If your suit hoards kinetic energy, what happens when you get hit repeatedly? You'd need some place to funnel that stored energy or risk destabilizing the metal. In the comics and films, Wakandans solve this with advanced energy management built into their tech and a society that tightly controls the metal. Tony, brilliant as he is, would have to rethink cooling, energy routing, and fail-safes. Now think about mobility. Tony's suits are masterpieces of weight-to-strength engineering. Early on, he used titanium and titanium gold alloys, and later miniaturized into nanoparticles and nanotech that reshape around him on command. Those materials are chosen because they balance lightness with strength and, crucially, predictable behavior under stress. Vibranium's exotic properties might make the suit heavier or behave strangely under high-frequency vibrations or energy discharges. Tony's nanoswarm, which relies on precise electromagnetic control, could find vibranium's energy-absorbing quirks frustrating. The metal would be soaking up forces Tony intends to route through his suit for flight, repulsors, or sensor arrays. That means rewiring basic assumptions about propulsion and weapon feedback loops. There's also politics and scarcity. In the MCU, vibranium is rare, tied to Wakanda, and jealously guarded. Tony did briefly synthesize a new element to replace palladium in his arc reactor in Iron Man 2, a retcon curiosity that, for a moment, suggested he'd invented vibranium, but the wider canon later made vibranium a naturally rare resource centered in Wakanda. So, realistic supply chains aside, a full vibranium suit would either require Wakandan permission or some major ethical and geopolitical fallout. Mechanically, what would change for Tony's systems? Repulsors in flight rely on channeling energy outward in controlled bursts. Vibranium loves absorbing energy. That's both a blessing and a nuisance. On the one hand, impacts at speed like atmospheric stress on flight would be damped, potentially making high-speed flight smoother and less damaging to the suit's frame. On the other hand, trying to eject exhaust or repulsor thrust through vibranium-lined ducts might mean some of that thrust is eaten by the metal instead of propelling him forward. Engineers would have to design selective pathways, vibranium plates for the shell, but non-absorptive channels for engines and weapon vents. In short, a hybrid architecture, not a single material solve. Let's talk offensive power. If vibranium can store kinetic energy, Tony could theoretically design weapons that charge from impacts received and then redirect that stored energy back at enemies. Picture an armor that converts a missile strike into surplus power for a devastating counterblast. Sounds unbeatable until an opponent tampers with that stored energy. Villains like Doctor Doom or Kang don't play fair. A well-placed EMP or an exotic field could scramble the energy management system and turn stored energy into a catastrophic failure. In multiple Marvel stories, materials that store energy are also vulnerabilities because they create a single point where an opponent can cause a massive release. So Tony would need redundancies, mechanical pressure valves, multiple energy reservoirs, and software that can dump energy safely when needed. Another big question, what about stealth and sensors? Vibranium, depending on the version, has weird interactions with vibrations and even sound. A vibranium suit might be quieter in the field. Impacts wouldn't clang through the metal the way steel would. That's great for covert ops. But vibranium's tendency to absorb environmental vibrations could also dampen sensors that rely on vibration or sonar-like readings. Tony's heads-up displays, suit sensors, and environmental scanners would need to be retooled to account for a quiet shell that muffles the suit's own feedback. In some ways, the suit could be its own sensor dead zone, excellent for stealth, tricky for awareness. We must not forget health and biology. In comics, long-term exposure to vibranium sometimes has biological side effects. Ecosystems and people around vibranium deposits can mutate. Wakanda's scientists learn to manage this, but Tony's constant proximity to a full suit made of this ore raises questions about long-term exposure to exotic energies. Would his physiology be affected? Would repeated absorption and release cycles create radiation or particle effects his body must compensate for? Tony's suit tech might need biomagnetic shields, or he'd accept those risks because the tactical advantages outweigh them. These are the kinds of human costs Tony often underestimates in favor of performance. Now, the fun bit, aesthetics and narrative. A vibranium Iron Man suit turns Tony into an icon who literally carries Wakanda's power, and that's story gold. The suit becomes not just a tool, but a moral weight. Would Tony leverage Wakandan secrets? Would he trade tech for good? Would he keep the suit secret? Each option has consequences. The best storytelling makes these choices matter. A vibranium suit could be the ultimate status symbol, but also the ultimate temptation and vulnerability. It would change how allies and enemies view him overnight. Finally, let's answer the practical question. Is it better? In many ways, yes, a full vibranium shell would make Tony's armor more damage-absorbent, potentially quieter, and capable of novel energy tricks. But it's not a silver bullet. Vibranium introduces new engineering problems: energy routing, propulsion interference, storage risks, sensor blind spots, and political fallout. In practice, Tony would likely end up with a hybrid design: vibranium, where impact absorption matters most, gold titanium, and specialized alloys where precise energy transfer and weight savings are essential, and nanotech to tie everything together. That compromise keeps the best of both worlds: the shock-absorbing magic of vibranium and the predictable, controllable performance of Stark's alloys. So now you know, vibranium could make Iron Man nearly unstoppable, but it could just as easily break everything that makes his suit work. The real question is, would you actually want to see Tony Stark step into a full vibranium armor, or do you think it would cause more problems than it solves? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I want to hear your take. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. There's plenty more Marvel and Wakanda related content